Hello! Hey guys, Pat here. So we're gonna talk about this big story. This is one of the biggest stories of the year when it comes to movies, and this is big news. No matter how you try to look at it. So they fired Chris Lord and Phil Lord and Chris Miller, not Chris Lord and Phil Miller. Phil Lord and Chris Miller from the Han Solo film. These two guys. If you don't know who these two guys are, they created and wrote the show Clone High, which is one of the best animated shows you'll ever see. Some of the wittiest writing you'll see on an animated show. They did the very successful Cloudy with the Chance of Meatballs. They did 21 Jump Street and 22 Jump Street, which were both huge hits, very critically acclaimed, and the Lego Movie, which was highly critically acclaimed and also a huge hit. So these guys have helped kick off franchises. There was a sequel to Cloudy with the Chance of Meatballs. There will be a third 21 Jump Street movie. They may not direct it, but it'll be a hit. And the Lego franchise has pretty much been kicked off by these two guys, which has now led to the Lego Batman movie, because they made a really, really good movie. So to say that they have a good track record is an understatement. They have 4 successful films. They have successful TV shows. They also worked in How I Met Your Mother. They are known as a super duo on a set that they pretty much know so much when it comes from the technical side of film and the understanding of film and comedy and timing and pace. The cast they assembled in this movie is incredible. You got to think about it. They went out and got Donald Glover for Lando. Donald Glover is coming off Atlanta. His latest Childish Gambino album from I think last year. Just a huge career boost. He's going to be Simba in the Lion King live action adaptation. Great casting. They cast Woody Harrelson. The cinematographer that's working on this film, Bradford Young, shot Arrival. The script was written by Lawrence Kasdan, who wrote Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, and also worked on Force Awakens with J.J. Abrams. This is a bad sign for the movie, and this worries me about Disney and how they're producing these Star Wars movies. I'm going to be cynical in this video, because I always fall on the side of the filmmakers in these situations. Rarely, in this kind of environment, are the producers in the right. Rarely. You do not see this often. This film was almost done shooting. I found this out yesterday during a live stream because somebody said it, and I was like, that doesn't make any sense. They've been filming the movie for, since February. Why the hell would they fire these guys? No, they did. So there's still weeks of shooting left, and they're going to do reshoots and a bunch of post. Now, I've made it clear in other videos I'm not the biggest Force Awakens fan. I don't dislike the movie. It's kind of like a 7 to me, a 6.5, a 7. It's okay, but it's very generic. Lauren Kasdan's script's very generic with Abrams. The cinematography, the acting, everything about it's just good. A lot of it, but it's nothing great. There's great moments here and there, but I actually liked Rogue One a lot more. And Rogue One did have reshoots, mind you. The whole third act of Rogue One was reshot, and Tony Gilroy came in and worked on a lot of the film because they didn't think Gareth Evans was doing. I think it's Gareth Edwards. I can't remember I think it's Gareth Edwards, but he was having a hard time with the movie, figuring out how to end it. And I really liked Rogue One, but it still had that made by committee thing about it, right? It still didn't totally feel like a movie. They took risks with the lead characters, and like I said, I really liked Rogue One. I think it was a good movie. I do, but it still worries you when you're reading about a movie and they're this far. This isn't like Rogue One. Rogue One, they pretty much had a whole movie shot, and then they went back and fixed stuff that didn't work. They had a final cut, and they're like, oh, this doesn't really work. We need to reshoot a lot of the stuff in the third act and make this a little bit more coherent. That makes sense, honestly. World War Z had that issue. They finished the movie, they didn't really like the end result, so they wanted to go back and fix some things and work on the third act. This movie, they're not even done with filming. Okay, and this was a creative fight. This wasn't a fight over these guys are untalented and it wasn't working. Kathleen Kennedy did not like what these guys were doing, and that's really scary because I know people say, oh, Kathleen Kennedy, she has a great track record, and all of her stuff really works, and she's one of the great producers. I agree with you guys. She is a great producer, and she's worked with Spielberg for years, and she definitely deserves her credit in Hollywood history. However, it is scary to think when you read the news coming out about this right now. I think this is scary. I think this doesn't mean the movie will be bad. That doesn't mean that they can't come in and reshoot things and make it work and bring in another director and keep a lot of the stuff Lord and Miller did. But it worries me about the future of these films because even though Rian Johnson said he's had a great time and been able to do what he wants, it really kind of makes it clear that these directors do not get to do whatever they want. They don't get to make the films that they want. Why would you get rid of two guys who have had 4 hit movies that are like golden boys? I mean, when you give them complete carte blanche, I'm serious, like, the only time you should really be restrictive to a director is if they haven't proven themselves yet. Which I could totally get that with the Rogue One guy, because he just had Godzilla, and that movie made money, but it kind of got mixed reviews to okay reviews, and it wasn't a huge hit. It just did good. It had a really bad box office weekend drop. These guys have had 4 critically acclaimed, successful films. They've had 4 films that are, like, loved, very popular movies. It's not like they're guys who have made okay things, and they've been around for, like, 15 years. They're not new guys to the industry. So it's a little confusing. But like I said, that doesn't mean that the movie will be bad. I'm not talking shit. I'm not acting like it's going to be a bad movie, but it's disconcerting for me. This is what I feel about a lot of the Marvel films, is that they don't have vision. They don't feel like they're made by movies. They feel like they're made by producers. And I don't mind that so much with Kevin Feige, because he seems to really know comic books. And a lot of the choices he makes are good choices for the long term, even if I don't like them necessarily for each film. With Star Wars, I'm already starting to feel a mess going on here. I think there was a lot of stuff in The Force Awakens that was poorly thought out. I think having Luke, Han, and Leia not have a scene together was a really bad idea. I think Luke only being in 30 seconds of the movie was laughable. It was kind of like a joke. It was literally like is this a punchline to a joke to Abrams fucking with me? The fact they introduced another Death Star. I mean, there was just a lot of things like that were kind of like, this feels like stuff a studio came up with to sell this to as many people as possible. And this is what scares me about this movie. We have a Han Solo film that's a prequel, and a lot of us didn't want this. We didn't want a Han Solo film, but once they attached these directors to it, I was like, well, you know what, this could probably be a pretty good movie, because these guys have shown they're good filmmakers. I've kind of lost faith in Lawrence Kasdan. He's one of my favorite writers of all time. I love his script for Raiders and Empire. He wrote a terrific movie, Body Heat, Grand Canyon, The Big Chill, a lot of great films. They're The Accidental Tourist. You should go back. But his recent output over the last, let's say, 15 years, he made that movie Dreamcatcher, which is one of the worst movies I've ever seen. And then he wrote Force Awakens, which I didn't think was a great screenplay, especially how him and Abrams said they walked around for hours and talked about all these new ideas they had. And I'm like, what? You just ripped off the old movies. And like I said, big Lawrence Kasdan fan, but, you know, I was more excited about these guys making the movie because I thought they would give it a unique vision. They would come in and add their humor, their style, their sensibilities, and do something different. It would make the films feel fresh again and not like just copy and paste jobs, which is how I kind of feel about these Disney Star Wars films. I enjoy them all. I'm in the theater. They're fine, but they're junk food. They're junk food you just eat. And I know people are going to say, well, Star Wars was always made by committee. To a degree. But see, when George Lucas did it back in the 70s and the early 80s, I don't know, it's just a different time in Hollywood. You know, they were trying to innovate special effects and innovate film in general. Like when the Battle of Hoth happened and that stuff in those movies, those were groundbreaking moments that they wanted to push. And ILM did a great job, but they were still the director's movies for a lot of it. Like Empire, Irvin Kershner directed all the scenes with the actors and the dialogue and stuff, and those scenes are so good. This scares me because it feels like the studio wants to add things that Lord and Miller did not want to add. And this also makes me worried about Kathleen Kennedy, because I'm not trying to say there's this feminist message in these Star Wars movies, but we've had 2 films in a row now with a female lead, right? 2 in a row, and we're going to have, the trilogy's going to be a female lead with Rey, and then the current video game coming out, the new Battlefront game, has a female lead. If this movie comes out, and they try to downplay Han Solo as the lead to put a female in it more, and I'm not saying that's going to happen, but if you see that, you are guaranteed, I will guarantee you that was Kathleen Kennedy. Because Kathleen Kennedy is obsessed with this feminism thing with these movies. She's not in the Amy Pascal mode, but all she talks about is, I want to make movies for young girls to look up to, so I'm going to have Mary Sue characters in every single one of my movies. It sucks. It really sucks. It doesn't feel like these women are put in there because they were the right character or the idea. It feels like they just wanted to cast strong women in the movies. They didn't think about them as characters. They're like, well, we need the lead in The Force Awakens to be a chick. All right, fuck it, Rey. And yet, in my opinion, Finn and Poe stole the movie. Those 2 actors had much more charisma and chemistry. And I'm sorry, you could tell that Daisy Ridley's just kind of a new actress and needs a lot of work. Not that Mark Hamill didn't, but Luke isn't entirely always the focus. They do a really good job in the original trilogy of giving everyone their moment to shine. Okay, so this is about how the DGA is having issues with this, because this is a major issue, because basically you have to be part of the Directors Guild to work on movies and stuff like that. And this does not happen often. This is very rare that a film this far into production brings in someone new. I mean, I could think of some occasions like Superman 2 with Richard Lester and Richard Donner, but this is rare. This isn't like Joss Whedon coming in to work on some of the stuff with Justice League because Zack Snyder went to go deal with this kid's suicide. This film's not in post yet. They're still filming. And they're going to go back and do reshoots, so I have no idea how this film's going to turn out. Because you have so much footage that's shot by two filmmakers that had a certain vision for it, and now you're going to have someone else come in and do something different with it with the studio. It's just, this is either going to be a mess or a film that works by being slapped together. But that worries me that it's just going to be another, here's a movie for everyone to like, and doing nothing different, new, or challenging to the Star Wars canon, and it's just going to be kind of another remake with a bunch of homages to the old stuff. Like, hey, don't you like this stuff from the old movies? And I really felt like Lord and Miller were going into this with something new. It just felt that way. This felt different, this movie, the way they were casting it, and the way they were going about it. It just felt like youth. This movie felt younger than the other films. It felt like it was going to bring some kind of new energy. I could be wrong. Maybe Lord and Miller fucked up. Maybe they were on the set and they were making something bad and crappy. It's kind of hard to believe, though, that guys who made 4 good movies, have a great track record, just came in all of a sudden and made a crappy movie. That they couldn't work out something with the studio. Now, they were going to direct The Flash, and they left that movie early on, and other things, but every time Lord and Miller have ever left a project, from what I've read, it's just because they can't get enough creative controls, because the producers wanted them to do things. And I'm sorry, I'm going to stick with the filmmakers once again. I respect the filmmakers that don't cater to producers. I hate filmmakers that cave to producers and listen to their notes and take everything, and, when you know that your decision's right because you have taste like Lord and Miller do, and you don't want to make something mediocre or crappy, I'm sorry, I totally agree with that. That's why I love directors like David Fincher. He takes a long time to make movies because when he makes a movie, it's freaking good. He doesn't want to make a shitty film. I don't like workman directors. I don't like directors who just make movies to make movies. That's what Abrams is. And I don't hate Abrams, but that's what it is. It's just like, I'm just going to do this movie very workman-like and listen to the producers. That's not film. That's not art. That's commercials, you know? And I know people think Star Wars was always a commercial, but it wasn't. There was truly a pathos and epic storytelling and artistry to Star Wars in the original trilogy that is not present in these new films. The process, particularly in the case of such high-profile film, is likely to drag a range of ranking DGA officials into the mix. The possibility of according credit to 3 directors, Lord, Miller, and their successor, is likely to seem both logical. No, that's the thing. Like, you gotta understand, they're gonna have to still credit Lord and Miller and a 3rd director. So this film's gonna have a weird credits. It's gonna have Lord, Miller, and then a 3rd director. Because they're not gonna be able... This isn't like Richard Donner, where they're gonna reshoot a whole half of the movie so Richard Lester gets a director's credit. I don't know how they're going to release this movie without giving Lord and Miller credit. So this is weird. This is really weird. What about the residuals? If Lord and Miller should decide to pull their names from the picture, their names would be replaced with a pseudonym, most commonly Alan Smithy. That's a name they use if a director leaves a film. You'll see this in a lot of movies. And they might have to forfeit residuals. But assuming they don't pull their names, but are just off the picture, the rules don't seem to say what happens to residuals in this case. Possibly that makes it a matter of negotiation between the departed director's agents and lawyers and Lucasfilm and the new director's representatives. Profit participation back-end is another complication. Although not a guild matter, it may already be addressed in the pair's directing deal. But in Hollywood, a written agreement is often just a good start for negotiations. Last but not least, do Lord and Miller have the right to insist on tickets to the film's premiere? That won't happen for a while. As of now, the film's scheduled release date remains unchanged as May 25th, 2018. Okay, so they're trying to release this film in May, and they've fired the directors this far into production. So that means they still have a lot of work to go do, and they have to go reshoot. I wish some more information was out on this. But this is just one side of it, that this is going to be a big clusterfuck for the Directors Guild. This is very tough, because you have a lot of people to credit. Where does the money go? Who gets the back end? This article really goes into it a little bit, but this is one thing that's going to be very, very tough. And it means that despite speculation that veteran writer-director Lawrence Kasdan, who has written the new film screenplay with his son John Kasdan, could step in and direct, such a move would violate the DGA rule. Yeah, they're talking about Ron Howard and Joe Johnston, about the names being mentioned. See, once again, I don't like that. I don't hate Ron Howard or Joe Johnston, but they're workman directors. Ron Howard may occasionally make a great film like Apollo 13 or Frost Nixon, but he's a workman-like director. He just makes movies. They're never really great or bad. They're just in the middle sometimes. Same with Joe Johnston. Sure, I like The Rocketeer and October Sky as much as the next guy, but these are guys the studio clearly wants to come in, shoot the movie the way they want them to do it. I mean, it just reeks of that. That this is like, oh, we need some old timers who can come in and just do what I want them to do. I mean, this just reeks of Kathleen Kennedy going back to the well and not wanting something new and creative. Once again, I could be wrong, but I'm going to go with Phil Lord and Chris Miller because they have 4 great films, and I have seen 2 mediocre to okay Star Wars films so far. Okay, here's some news from Business Insider. Okay, let's go up a little bit, and then we can wrap this video up here soon. On Tuesday night, Lucasfilm announced on StarWars.com that it made a directing change for its untitled Han Solo movie, parting ways with Phil Lord and Christopher Miller due to creative differences, though there were only a few weeks left of principal photography. This move is unprecedented and one in history of Hollywood, as one of the landmark franchises in the business is now scrambling to complete one of its most anticipated standalone movies. Since the initial news broke, there have been numerous reports that have led to the split, including one which reveals that Lord and Miller were fired from the project by Lucasfilm head Kathleen Kennedy. Now, last night when I heard, I thought they weren't fired. I heard they just separated, which made no sense. But I go, maybe they had a fight. But no, apparently they were fired by Kathleen Kennedy. Like, she told them to leave the project, which is nuts. That is crazy. This is an Edgar Wright leaving Ant-Man, which ended up being, once again, like Ant-Man, fun movie, but very generic, mediocre. You know, has some good special effects, some nice acting, but you think about Edgar Wright directing it, the guy made Scott Pilgrim, Hot Fuzz, Shaun of the Dead, and it has Baby Driver coming out, and you're like, huh, he probably would have made a really original, quirky, unique film. Marvel didn't want that. You can know all the stories you want, but that's typically how these things are. If they can't get the film the producer wants to hit as many demographics as possible to make the most, middle ground film that everyone can like, they don't want to make those movies. They don't want to make the risky, challenging, dark, interesting, maybe not even dark and interesting, just different. Like, we have no idea that this film wasn't funny, new, I mean, look at it. This cast just looks fun, right? Like, look at the guy playing Han Solo. Look at Lando over here, Donald Glover, who I love. I love Donald Glover. I think he's about to become a megastar. Chewie. I mean, this just looks like everyone's ready to go. Woody Harrelson. I mean, I don't know. There's just, even in this picture, you can just kind of tell, like, these guys are ready to go. And I love how young they are, and like, this is such a big movie, and it just felt so right. It's become clear that we had different creative visions. The untitled young Han Solo movie starred Alden Enrich. That dude needs to change his name. That's a terrible Hollywood name. Alden Enrich. I don't know. Sorry, guys. I don't know how to say that name. He should just change his name to like Alden Henry or something, because that's not a very good actor's name. As the iconic space smuggler that Harrison Ford played in the original movie, Donald Glover as Solo friend Lando Calrissian, Woody Harrelson, Emil Clark, Tandy Newton, Michael K. Williams. Oh yeah, that's right. That is the Mother of Dragons right there. Holy shit. Daenerys Stormborn. I always get confused because I see her with the darker hair, and I forget. I always think of her as a blonde. Phil Lord and Christopher Miller are talented filmmakers who have assembled an incredible cast and crew, but it's become clear that we had creative visions. We have had different creative visions on this film, and we decided to part ways. A new director will be announced soon. Unfortunately, our vision and process weren't aligned with our partners on this project, Lord and Miller said in this same statement. We normally aren't fans of the phrase creative differences, but for once this cliche is true. We are really proud of the amazing and world-class work of our cast and crew. Both sides were saying the right things, but digging deeper, it seems there was a lot of friction on set. Yeah, I love when people always say, because everyone says that. Everyone says, oh, I know it's a cliche to say that, but this time it was true. I've heard that every time someone says creative differences. It's just to keep a good face so there's not lawsuits. Lucasfilm president Kathleen Kennedy reportedly fired Lord and Miller. The directors did not leave the project voluntarily, but were fired by Lucasfilm head Kathleen Kennedy, according to Variety. The move followed months of conflict between Kennedy, who is also one of the producers on the movie, and the director. See, they didn't leave voluntarily. Okay, so maybe they didn't want to leave this movie. That's another thing that worries me. Like, if this is true, these reports are true from Variety and stuff like that, and these aren't bullshit sources like Variety or Hollywood Reporter or Business Insider. I mean, if these are true, that's scary stuff. That means that these guys didn't want to leave the movie. They had a movie they were working on. They wanted to finish it, and she's like, nah, nah, I'm going to do what I want to do, and you guys can get the fuck out. As a producer, that's her right, of course. And Disney's given her the keys to this, and of course she's had 2 successful films, but it's a pretty shitty move to fire big-name directors like this. It really is. This is a shitty move. I mean, this is bad taste in Hollywood. It'll make directors not want to go work on these Star Wars movies, stuff like this. And it's this, you'll hear about this stuff. Directors, when they hear stories like this, they're like, oh, well, yeah, I'm not going to go work for them. Because so far the Disney model seems to be, let's hire some indie directors, made 2 films, like Colin Trevorrow, who made Jurassic World after having safety not guaranteed. And now he has a new film, Book of Henry, which is awful. And the guy directed Rogue One. He directed one movie, then they gave him Godzilla. I mean, at least these 2 guys have they've directed 4 movies that were big hits. They weren't necessarily big budget films, but they've directed 4 films in a row that were very big and successful movies. So they have a little bit more experience. Like J.J. Abrams probably has the most experience, but these guys have experience. They're professional directors. They're not just indie guys who got a job here. It was a culture clash from day one. Sources told Variety that even though Lord and Miller felt that they had made their bones in the business after helming ambitious movies like the Lego Movie and 21 Jump Street. Well, I don't know if 21 Jump Street was ambitious. And deserved some creative freedom, it turned out making a Star Wars movie meant being under the control of Kennedy. The 2 were constantly criticized for the style in which they shot scenes and their interaction with their stars. It was a culture clash from day one, a source told Variety. She didn't even like the way they folded their socks. The way they worked even got under the way they worked even got under the skin of the movie screenwriter Lawrence Kasdan, who has been part of the Star Wars family going back to when he penned The Empire Strikes Back. See, this makes me wonder what they were doing on this movie. Because why were they upsetting Kathleen Kennedy so much from the beginning, and why were they upsetting Lawrence Kasdan? Was it because they were mocking Star Wars? There is a theory about this, that this movie, in a way, might have had a lot of slams and jokes making fun of the prequels, the George Lucas prequels, and the previous films, and that Lord and Miller are making a film that isn't just celebrating and sucking off Star Wars and fanboys like Force Awakens did or Rogue One. It's a film that's legitimately criticizing tropes and issues in Star Wars and criticizing the fan base a little bit and George Lucas. And you got to think, these are the guys who do deconstructive films. Like 21 Jump Street, in a lot of ways, and 22 Jump Street especially, is deconstruction. Lego Movie is a complete deconstruction of the modern-day blockbuster. So, it's not hard to believe these guys who are masters of parody and satire and comedy in that sense have made 4 movies that are kind of in that sense. Were they making a film that was kind of like self-aware about Star Wars and funny, and that pissed off Kennedy and Lawrence Kasdan, who think there should be this huge respect and love and loyalty and seriousness to the Star Wars films? And I'm not saying one way is right or wrong, but I'm wondering if that was the clash, that Lord and Miller kind of came in with something that was, you know, it didn't just suck the dick of Star Wars as a franchise, which is what I wanted. I want something that's new and punk rock. Okay, I don't want the movie that's just going to come in and be like, let's give you what you've seen before. That's what made Empire Strikes Back so good, is that it wasn't what Star Wars was. It was a totally different movie. And then Return of the Jedi went right back to New Hope stuff, and we've never really left that. It's just kind of been this back and forth. Maybe we do need a Star Wars film that was a comedy and more fun and moves differently and has a different style and tone to it. I mean, it's weird. Like, it was a culture clash from day one. See, that's a weird thing there, a culture clash. What does that even entirely mean? I mean, I know what it means on the surface, but how deep does that go? What were they fighting about? Why were they... Because these guys, they don't shoot movies bad. Their cinematography to all their films is really good. All their movies. The action scenes are really good. Even in 21 Jump Street and Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, those are good action scenes. Really good action scenes. I mean, they clearly know how to shoot and edit and put a movie together. And they've shown that, you know, like I said, and there's work in animation's terrific. I mean, I thought this was like a Brad Bird situation. These guys were going to make something that became like Mission Impossible 4 here. And everyone was going to be like, fuck yeah, maybe they should bring Brad Bird to work on this. I know Tomorrowland sucked, but Brad Bird works for Disney, maybe. Although, is he working on Incredibles 2 right now? So yeah, I would give Lawrence Kasdan the edge here, but his script for Force Awakens was so lacking that it's hard to be like, yeah, Lawrence Kasdan, because Lawrence Kasdan hasn't written a great script since like 1993 or something. So until he comes back and writes another great script, I'm gonna not give him the benefit of the doubt. I hate to, but the last thing he worked on that was his was Dreamcatcher, and it's awful. Like Rogue One, reshoots are planned for the Han Solo movie. Lord and Miller were informed there would be several weeks of reshoots done later in the summer, a move that Rogue One director Gareth Edwards had to endure. The reshoots would have likely included Kennedy bringing on her own trusted behind-the-scenes talent to help Lord and Miller shape their stories to feel more like a Star Wars movie, like what Edwards agreed to when Tony Gilroy came on to direct the reshoots of Rogue One. Now, I like the Tony Gilroy parts of Rogue One. I can tell which scenes he directed. But here's the difference. Gareth Edwards isn't a very good director. He's visually terrific. Monsters, Godzilla, and Rogue One have beautiful cinematography, set design, and special effects. He's terrific technical. He's not a very good storyteller or director of actors. Even Rogue One that I like has kind of bland performances and cliche dialogue. He just directs it like a generic 80s action film. That's all he seems to know to do. He did the same thing in Godzilla. He killed off the most interesting character 15 minutes in, and then followed this boring military story. He's not a very good writer, like storyteller. Like I said, he's a visual guy, but he doesn't seem to know how to tell a story from scene to scene. Tony Gilroy worked on the Bourne trilogy. He wrote those scripts. He wrote and directed Michael Clayton, a very good film. So he's somebody that has a track record. So Tony Gilroy came in, probably wrote a lot of the dialogue in the third act, directed a lot of those really tense action scenes in the third act, like when they're breaking out and all that stuff. I think the whole third act of Rogue One's really good. The movie all of a sudden dramatically gets more interesting. The visuals get more interesting. The pace all gets more interesting. That feels like Tony Gilroy. A lot of those clever things at the very end feel like things Tony Gilroy came in and was like, don't worry, I got an idea. And, yeah, it made sense. And he oversaw the reshoots with Gareth, and it seems like they worked together to try to make the movie more cohesive. Like, it seems like the film... And even when you watch Rogue One, the first 30 minutes, 40 minutes is a little messy, and then all of a sudden in the second half it all starts to kind of come together. That was the reshoots. But here's the difference here. These are two guys that are really, really good filmmakers and storytellers that have consistently shown that... These are guys that did a whole series, Clone High, with terrific storytelling. These aren't just visual guys like Gareth Edwards who may have needed help fleshing out a story, and they had a lot of people come and work on the script. Christopher McQuarrie, I think... Chris Weitz wrote the original script, and then they had Tony Gilroy come in and work on stuff. This movie has like two really good directors on it, two guys that are like, you know, they're kind of like wonderkins. They're really talented. So to bring in a new director that's like just a Hollywood name like a Ron Howard, that's different because it's not like, oh, well, this director was fucking up. It seems like the producers want to make a totally different film and they didn't like that Lord and Miller were making their own movie. Like, people are going to say, oh, well, maybe this will be like Rogue One. I don't think they're comparable because the Rogue One story was totally different. The movie didn't really have a solid ending, and there was some emotional stuff missing that they thought would be better if they went back and reshot things. And they reshot stuff in Force Awakens, too. I don't mind reshoots. Reshoots can help a movie because you look at what you have and you go back and you fix things. But this is different because they're going to bring in a whole new creative team to do different things altogether. And Lord Miller, I don't think they're going to have much say in this. So we might see a film that feels disconnected because it's going to have visions from all sorts of different sources, which is scary. I really don't want that. I don't want another Age of Ultron Marvel experience where you see Kevin Feige and Joss Whedon and the cast and everyone's fucking stuff going in there. It's like, God, can you just let the filmmakers make the movie, good or bad, and just let them release it and let it hold ground on its own thing? I mean, what it is. Like, you let Jon Favreau do that shit, you know, with Jungle Book. Like, just let a director make the movie they want to make and see how it goes. Ron Howard may finish the movie. Kathleen Kennedy said that the announcement about who will replace Lord and Miller is coming shortly. It's hard to imagine she hasn't already signed on a replacement. Deadline reports that Oscar-winning director Ron Howard is the frontrunner. Howard is a veteran director known for movies like Apollo 13 and A Beautiful Mind. Though he's never made a movie of this size, I'm not really sure that he's made $150 million films before. That film he made last year, the Ocean film, what was actually a big budget film. All Kennedy really needs is someone who can keep the ship afloat until production wraps. It seems she has enough people who will contribute the creative portions needed. Other possibilities to take the director's chair are Kasdan and Joe Johnston, Captain America: The First Avenger. He also did visual effects on the original Star Wars prequels. Lord and Miller may direct The Flash. We certainly haven't heard the last of Miller and Lord. The duo had a meeting with DC Films during a hiatus on Han Solo about filming the director vacancy in its Flash movie, according to the Wrap. The two are familiar with the project. They wrote the movie's original treatment at 25. So they might go on to work on the Ezra Miller DC Flash movie, these two, which is very exciting because I think they're a perfect fit for the Flash. Like, when you really think about the comedy in the Lego Movie, and you think about Barry Allen and that, I mean, these guys are, like, honestly, they're a better fit for the Flash than they are Star Wars. I've heard some people say they don't think these guys were a good fit for this creatively and it always felt off. I don't really agree with that assessment. I've heard a lot of people say this too, like, well, they never felt right for Star Wars. I'm like, how are the guys that made the Lego Movie a brilliant blockbuster that comments on blockbusters not right for Star Wars? I'm totally confused about that. How are they right for... They're not right for Star Wars, but, like, J.J. Abrams is because he made some Star Trek movies, and he just rips off all the shots from Spielberg and Lucas. Like, these guys who are really talented young directors who have made 4 really good movies, they're not fit for a big blockbuster movie like Star Wars. I think the tone here was comedy. I think they were probably making a comedy that had a very self-aware tone, and that's not what Kennedy wanted. I'm hoping there's no politics behind this, that this wasn't that they wanted to push some political shit in here and they couldn't get that. Before we wrap this up, I'm going to go to Deadline real quick and see if there's another story on this, because this is the most I could find on it at the moment. This news just broke recently, so it's really tough to find. Yeah, that's really the biggest news, is Ron Howard's the top choice to take over Star Wars Han Solo pick. So that's all we really know, is that Ron Howard may come in and finish filming this movie, and then they're going to go do some reshoots and try to release it in May, and we don't know how it'll turn out. We have no idea. It's a roll of the dice at this point. Were you excited about this movie? Were you excited about... Do you like the new Star Wars films? Do you like the standalone films? Did you like Force Awakens? I'm excited about The Last Jedi because I really do like Rian Johnson, and I love Brick. So I can't wait to see his movie. And that's going to be a big movie for me, because if that movie's great, then it'll give me hope in the producers and this film and what Kathleen Kennedy's doing. If that film does a lot of the same stuff Force Awakens did, then this movie's really going to worry me and the future of these films. But I'm going to give everyone the benefit of the doubt until the movie comes out, because we have no idea what happened, and there's going to be a lot more to the story as it unwraps. But this is just a weird thing. This does not happen. This is very rare. People are trying to spin this as not being weird. This does not happen. So some shit went down on the set of this movie. And if we'll ever find out the truth about it or not, I don't know. But this is one of those legendary Hollywood stories that I can't wait to read more about 10 years from now, because clearly something happened. It's just funny. It's just really funny and awkward and weird that this even happened, and it's going to be a very weird thing to go into the movie thinking about. I thought about the reshoots for Rogue One before going to see it, and that ultimately didn't affect the viewing experience much. This movie, it's a tough call. I don't know. It really sounds like they had actual fights on the set and were really disagreeing about things on this movie. But give me your opinion in the comments. Tell me what you think about all of this, as much information I've given you. If you love the new Star Wars movies, more power to you. And if you think this was a good choice, more power to you. I'm not saying one thing's right one way or the other. It's just kind of weird. It's a little suspicious, is all I'm saying. But thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. And may the Force be with you, because it's certainly not with these guys. The Force is not with them. They need to they need to go somewhere else. They need to maybe they could direct the next Star Trek movie or something, you know? Give them that. I don't know. It'd be cool if Edgar Wright stepped in and worked on this movie, but they're not going to let him come. God, will somebody just give Edgar Wright a fucking blockbuster already? Like, whose dick does he have to suck to get a fucking big movie made?